Feeling poor? Blame liberalism. In this series on Broken Britain, we explore all the ways in which Britain at the moment is completely broken, and we look at ways that you yourself can navigate your way through that. The biggest ultimate reason as to why Britain is currently in the state that it's in and why the Western world at large is in the state that it's in is due to the ideology of liberalism. Liberalism has been the foundations of Britain for hundreds of years, and it's took over as the dominant force after Christianity fell in the 1960s, at least in the UK anyway. It's not an over-exaggeration to say that the results of liberalism has been disastrous. Liberalism is why we are in the sorry state that we are in. The British people, as a result of liberalism, have stood by and done nothing as the population has ballooned with immigration. This has caused spiritual and financial consequences as our country is defaced and our available assets become ever more stretched across a population that's too large. Liberalism has encouraged us to abandon our home industries in the north of England in favour of virtue signalling by making other countries do our dirty work instead. So if you're a leftist and you're thinking, oh, well, all this industry closing is good news because it means a greener environment, haha, yay, happy rainbows. No, all that's happened is those factories have moved to another country, like India or China. So the fumes are still going out into the atmosphere. You've done nothing. All you've done is you've made your own country poor. Congratulations. This selling out has not only destroyed half of the country that depended on industry in the north, but it's also created a tacit admission amongst the bourgeois that we're too high and mighty to do dirty commoner work. You know, you'll see this with the left a lot, actually, in that, on the surface they'll say something that sounds very nice, but under the surface it's actually just a Freudian slip for what they really think. And you can see their classism on full display here, in that they think, these factory jobs, they shouldn't be done by us, they should be done by commoners in places like India and China. That's not what I think, that's what they think. They're just such massive liars that they will never actually admit that to you. Liberalism has encouraged us to take and take without ever giving anything back. This actually includes the expat situation. In my last video on Broken Britain, I got some people in the comments saying, oh, well, what about all the British expats that have gone abroad and, affected housing markets over there? No, I blame them as well. They are just as bad as the immigrants who have come over here, and quite frankly, those expats are degenerate traitors. Rather than staying at home, building the UK economy, doing their part for their people, they just abandoned their people in favour of a bit of degeneracy and a nice quiet life. Now, obviously there is that angle of it, but I can also see a little bit of their point. If they're a bit of a doomer and they understand these issues, and, in maybe like the 1970s and 80s, they just thought, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. Britain's going to be liberal forever. I may as well just give up. I can understand that doom and gloom mentality. However, I don't think a lot of expats had that mentality. I think a lot of them just went abroad because they wanted to lounge around in the sun and drink, a cocktail and a martini every day, rather than actually, helping out their country. Because, as much as you might not want to think about it, your country and your ethnos is your extended family. You have your family in your home, your wife, your kids, your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, etc. And at a wider level, your ethnos is your larger family. They are the next step down in terms of how they are related to you. And are you really going to treat them that way? The rest of the world doesn't treat them that way. The rest of the world treats their extended family very well. If you go into the ethnic enclaves in the UK, the Muslim communities, the Asian communities, etc., you go into their ethnic enclaves, they treat each other very well. They look out for each other as neighbours, etc., etc. Sometimes they do a little bit of rioting, as we saw yesterday in Hare Hills in Leeds. We can get into all kinds of debates onto why they behaved like that. However, the fact of the matter can't be denied is that these people do look out for one another, whether for better or for worse. And that's not something that can really be said for the British and for the Western world at large. And the cause of that is liberalism. Liberalism as an ideology preaches that we are all one people, that there's no difference between any of us. We're all the same, and we're all just economic units, effectively. And as a result of this, it breeds this very toxic individualist mentality. The worst of it's really come out in neoliberalism ever since the days of Thatcher, where, people, especially in Britain now, the white British just have this utterly toxic mentality of, oh, well, it's all about economics, it's all about, it's all about GDP. That's why the Conservative Party aren't conservative, by the way. They don't conserve anything. They don't conserve anything because the core tenet of their nation became liberalism. And so they found themselves in a very sticky conundrum in that, well, how are we going to conserve an ideology that by its very nature is not conservative? It is a revolutionary individualist ideology. The core tenets of liberalism, alongside, proclaiming that we're all one and that we're all equal, is that it's based on rights and freedoms compared to responsibilities. This makes it an incredibly childish ideology and an incredibly satanic ideology as well. And that's why Britain is now resembling a hellhole. That's why Britain now looks like, the back end of a dump, because its core ideology is satanic and childish. I mean, when you get a child, right, the child will be like, I want this, I want that, me, give me this, give me that. And you expect that from a child because a child doesn't yet understand the nuances of responsibility. The child hasn't yet learnt why responsibility is important and why ultimately we're all here in this world. The child just sees something that it wants and it cries out for that thing. And that's what you're seeing now with adults in liberal societies. These adults in liberal societies, these liberal men and women, they're not adults. They're all man-children. That's why you have the phenomenon of the soy boy and, the losers who, are still playing on their Nintendo Switches and their PS5s well into their late 30s, early 40s. It's because they've been brought up in a liberal society, and as a result, they've never had the opportunity to grow up. Your responsibilities to your friends, your family, and your community must always come first. And it's through addressing those responsibilities first that you inevitably give back to society instead of taking. To bring this back to finances and how this links to finances, if you just take instead of give, well, that economy is going to die very, very quickly, because an economy is just a measure of movement of goods and services between people in a society. And if everyone in the society is just trying to take, what you're going to get is you're going to get a group of people, the population of society, who are all just trying to scam one another and trying to rinse each other's pockets out. And all that'll mean is that everyone eventually will be poor because you've rinsed everyone's pockets out. To have a healthy economy, you have to be a sensible participant in the economy. You have to give and take, and it's through everyone giving and taking that you create a healthy economy. I mean, you look at so many jobs in this society and you wonder, what are these jobs even accomplishing economically? A lot of them aren't accomplishing anything economically. They're just, kind of there to prop up the liberal order. And there's only so many wooden planks you can prop up this Tower of Babel with before the entire tower just collapses under the weight of its own degeneracy. Liberalism's selfish mentality of it all being about you, it all being about your freedoms, my body, my choice, me. All of that attitude has created this dog-eat-dog world of ruthless capitalism, where, capitalism is no longer about doing pleasant business with one another like it used to be back in the day, but is now all about how to scam and rinse people for as much as you can get. We did see the beginnings of this in the Victorian era, admittedly. In the Victorian era, that was very much the birth of ruthless capitalism. But once again, that is down to liberalism, because liberalism ultimately came out of Enlightenment thinking, which is a philosophy of thought that really gained traction during the Victorian period, and then it really cemented itself after World War II in the 20th century. A liberal economy and society is destined to fail. There's no question about that. I don't care what liberals say. I don't care whether liberals are like, oh well, don't you think that everyone should have the right to be free? Don't you think everyone should have the right to be this, that? No. No, I don't. I purely reject your liberalism. I do not care. Responsibility comes first. Your rights and your freedoms are secondary to your responsibility to your family, your friends, and your community, and to the human race at large. Economically, if liberalism is not destroyed in the next 10 to 20 years, the economy will collapse under its own greed, and society will just spiral into a death cult. The beginnings of liberalism exposing its true colours have already begun now. We're seeing in liberal societies how much of a death cult liberalism actually is. It's now devolved to the point where liberals will proclaim that you now have the right to die. Liberalism has gotten to the point where it's now supporting euthanasia programs, and people should just kill themselves if they're feeling bad on a particular day. And the reason liberals support that is because liberalism is all about, mitigating your own suffering. It's all about, oh, I feel bad. I feel poopy today. I don't want to feel poopy. I want to feel happy. And so as a result of that childish 5-year-old mentality, you end up supporting people killing themselves. Because, if somebody's in a pee-pee poo-poo mood today and they don't feel particularly well, why not? Liberalism's goal at the end of the day is to make you happy and free. And, if in your life you feel your responsibilities are too great, then you're not happy and free. And liberalism should liberate you by killing you. It's devolved truly into a celebration of death and destruction. And that's why this, whole woke ideology that's really the child of liberalism is so repulsive and repugnant, because it's this child of liberalism that revels in death and destruction. It loves it. It can't get enough of it. And so what should you do, both spiritually and economically? You live in a liberal society, but what should you do personally? Just abandon it. Abandon liberalism. So many people in this society, especially amongst the white British community, just, accept liberalism as this holy doctrine that must not be challenged. And the time has come now for that really to stop being the case. It's time for normal people in the Western world to wake up to the realities of liberalism. It sounds nice and frolicky on the surface, but underneath it is a death cult, and you will die from this ideology. This ideology will kill you through kindness. By abandoning liberalism, you will be helping yourself not only on a societal level, but on a personal level too. It'll help you spiritually and financially. It will encourage you to live frugally, which will mean that you'll end up spending less and you'll end up saving more, which will make you richer. So for all those boomers out there who are on the way out, who are saying, oh, well, you just need to work harder. If you live frugally and live a humble life with a modest income, you will start to become rich over time, because you're not spending your money on degenerate vacations and all this crap. And obviously, going back to the spiritual aspect of it, you will find if you abandon liberalism, you will no longer have all these problems in your life. You won't have all this mental disturbance in your life. I reckon in the Western world, a big proportion of the mental illness problems that we're facing is down to liberalism. It's down to these people who think that, I feel bad and therefore that is bad. No, sometimes suffering is required. And sometimes you can learn great lessons from suffering. There's no such thing as pointless suffering. That's never allowed. God will never allow that to happen. You need to suffer sometimes to learn important lessons in your life. And if you just avoid that by behaving like a 5-year-old under liberalism and going back to your Nintendo Switch, you will suffer the consequences of that.